Before servicing the robot, don't forget to disconnect the AC power and turn off the DC power as well. To verify that the arm counterbalance is within the calibration range, we need to run the check program first. This program will move the arms through a preset range of motion to determine if the arm balance is neutral. This screenshot indicates that the arm counterbalance is out of its calibration range for the arm gimbal shaft and is within its calibration range for the secondary spring adjustment. Now that we've determined that the arm counterbalance needs adjustment, we're going to need to remove the rear top cover and the front top cover. Using the 4mm bit and the T-handle driver, take out the screws. So after removing the bolts, to remove the covers, you have to release the snaps on the back. You grab the back, bottom, or sides, pull backwards, and then lift on this right side gently to make sure the cover clears one of the bolts. To remove the top front cover, we need to release the snaps first. The best way to do that is using one of the small bits or the pair of needle nose about 4 centimeters up from the bottom. It'll pop the cover out, and then we need to pull it forward, and on the right side again lift gently to clear one of the screws. One of the shoulder covers, this one right here, we don't need to remove the back side. In this case we're using a 1.5mm bit, and we switch to 2mm bit. Then we switch one more time to the 2.5mm bit. And this cover we just pull straight out. And now we're ready to actually do the counterbalance adjustment. In this case, to gain access to this nut, we need to move the arm all the way down and lift the forearm as high as you can. As you can see, but lifting the forearm, that drops this down to gain better access. To make adjustments on the gimbal shaft, we use the small ratchet wrench together with a 13mm socket. Rotating it in the counterclockwise direction is a positive direction, and clockwise is the negative direction. For example, the program said we need to go 1 turn positive. We can only turn approximately 25% of the way around on each rotation. That would mean doing approximately 4 quarter turns. Conversely, if the instructions are to go -1, then we go 4 quarter turns clockwise. For secondary spring adjustment, we need to gain access to the secondary spring adjustment hole. We're going to insert this tube, which will help reduce any kind of friction when we make the adjustment. And we first need to line up the hole which is in the top of this pivot with this hole here. If it's lined up and this tube drops in, it will protrude about 1.5 centimeters. That tells you that you're lined up correctly. Then we have this 10 centimeter hex rod, which gets inserted through the sleeve until it engages the adjustment nut. Then using the 1/4 inch drive ratchet wrench and with a 10mm socket, we can now adjust the secondary spring. Turning the secondary spring adjustment clockwise is the positive direction. Turning it clockwise will increase the force on the arm, which will cause it to lift. When you make the turn, try to keep the adjustment tight because it has a tendency to self-center. So there's 1.5 turns, positive. Turning it counterclockwise is the negative direction. One and a half turns negative. After you finish the adjustment, make sure that you remove both the hex shaft and the sleeve. Now that we've made the adjustments, we can leave the covers off temporarily while we rerun the check program. To install the covers, in this case it's a reversal of the removal procedure. Here we make sure that we apply some Loctite. These 3 lower screws, we need to make sure we torque them up to 0.8 Newton meters. It is best to install them hand tight initially and then torque them up. For the remaining 2 screws, we have to reduce the torque back to 0.34. We will need to assemble a couple of adapters because we have space constraints. So in this case, we will assemble the 1/4 hex to the 1/4 square and put that onto the extender, into the torque driver, and with our bit, and then we can tighten up the screw. Using the 1.5 millimeter bit, we insert the smallest screw. To install the front cover, again we have a, make sure that we have some clearance here on the right side. Push this in place by pushing on the bottom front. Snap this cover back in place. The rear cover is very similar. You feed this in around the turret, lifting so that this clears that bolt. And then with it in place, we push the bottom cover into its snaps. Then using Loctite and resetting the torque driver to 1.34 Newton meters. And everything's back in place.